Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Gananantva Ganapatigim Havamahe Kavim Kavinamupamashravastamam Jyeshtarajam Brahmanam Brahmanaspata Anashrinvannutibhis Sidasadanam Mahaganapataye Namaha. Prano Devi Saraswati Vajebhirvajinivati Dhinamavitriyavatu Ano Divo Bruhatah Parvatada Saraswati Ajatagantu Yajñam Havan Devi Jujushana Krutachi Shakman Nova Chamushati Shrunotu Vagdevye Namaha. Atuna Indrakshumamtam Chitram Grabham Sangrabhaya Mahahasti Dakshinena Vitmahitva Atu Vikurmintu Videshnam Tuvimakham Tuvimatramavo Obhihi Nahitva Ashura Deva Namarta Asoditsantam Bhimannagau varayante eton vindram stavamesha anau vasvasvarajam naradhasa mardhishannaha prasto oshadupagasi shachravatsa magiyamanam abhiradhasa jugurate Ano bharadakshine bhisavyena pramrisha Indramano vasor nirbhaake Upakramasva bharadhrishata dhrishno jananam Ada ashushtarasya vedaha Indraya unute astivajo viprebhis sanitvaha Asmabhis suttam sanuhi Sadyo juvaste vaja asmabhyam vishvaschandraha Pashayishcha makshu jarante Ganana antva ganapatim havamahe Kavim kavinamupamashravastamam Jyeshtarajam Brahmanam Brahmanaspata Anashrinvannutibhis Sidasadanam Nishusi Ida Ganapate Ganeshu Tvama Ahurvipratamam Kavinam Narate Tvatkriyate Kinchanare Mahamarkam Maghavan Chitramarcha Abhikyano Maghavanna Dhamanan Sakhe Bodhivasupate Sakhinam Ranang Kridhiranakrit Satya Shushma Bhakti Chida Bhajaraye Asmane Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi.
Namaskar. The chanting this morning was by Dorian Reyners from Deest, a city in the Belgian province of the Flemish Brabant. Dorian is a music therapist and is learning chanting from Shantala Sri Ramaya, who is a student of the Veda Pandit Sri Chalakare brothers. Swagatam and welcome to all our esteemed speakers, guests and audiences from around the world to our annual event, Namaste 2021, a global Utsava of Indian soft power, brought to you by the Center for Soft Power, an arm of the Indic Academy, in collaboration with the ICCR. This is the fourth session of the festival, Timeless Cinema, Indian Stories on the Silver Screen. Much research has gone on about the influence of the visual media on communities, and the conclusion has been that the impact of visual media is indeed immense. Hence, the responsibility of creating quality movies rests squarely on the filmmakers, whether it be films on TV or anywhere, the visual media is very, very, very powerful. We have with us a special guest today, Ms. Aparna Patwardhan. She is the director of Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center of Bangkok, Thailand. After completing her engineering degree and an MBA from North Carolina, she worked in IT startups and majors such as HP and Oracle in a career that spanned over 13 years. She became a social activist and was a part of a non-profit platform for art and culture, education, health, and environment, and has presented and written various publications on cultural and other issues. Aparna,
Yes.
over to you now. Please do enlighten us with your opening remarks.
Namaste, good morning. At the outset, I would like to thank Mrs. Vijayalakshmi Vijaykumar for the introduction and for inviting me, for honoring me with an invitation to the segment of Namaste Global Utsava, and also greetings to the esteemed panel. As director of the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center in Thailand, I would like to take the opportunity to present perhaps a slightly different perspective on cinema. Cinema is one of the most powerful mediums of communication, as Vijayalakshmi ji just now put it across. And it is a medium very close to the hearts of Indians especially. Cinema has a huge influence on people's lives. While there is art and entertainment value, cinema has also been an instrument of social change. Indian cinema has been a very successful brand ambassador of Indian culture. During the silent movie era and the black and white era, mythologies were the most popular themes. Then came the social themes, then the patriotic themes, then the angry young man arrived, then the underworld themes began, all reflecting the changing times. Today, it is difficult to pinpoint one genre of cinema as predominant, given that this is the multiplex era. But ask a foreigner and he or she will, through today's cinema, gather that India has many slums, large-scale poverty, and that Indians celebrate weddings on a grand scale with plenty of songs and dances, which is true to a certain extent, but not the kind of exaggeration that is shown in movies about weddings in India. And that our gods and certain people like Brahmin Pandits and Banyas, traders are caricatures in Indian society. This is the unfortunate stereotyping that cinema has reinforced in today's times. Now, Indian cinema, because of this, has upon it the responsibility to portray the new resurgent India and to get rid of the exaggerated and irrelevant stereotypes that it has projected. India, as you know, it is the world's largest and oldest continuous and continuing civilization. India is a country of more than 1 billion people with a diversity that is probably not found anywhere else in the world. India has contributed very richly to philosophy, art, architecture, science, astronomy, engineering, and a lot more to the world. Today's India is a very modern, progressive society that derives its strength from its civilizational values. India is one of the top performing economies. It is home to a thriving community of entrepreneurs. It has a successful space program, and the percentage of female students in STEM disciplines is almost equal to the male students, and it is way ahead of the West on this parameter. Women lead in all spheres of life. In the crime rate index, India ranks much lower with much less crime than the US and UK and much of the developed world, even though India has lesser number of police officers compared to these countries. Of course, the number of police officers being less is nothing to boast about, but I'm talking about the crime rate here. This is the reality from which cinema needs to find stories. We recently celebrated the win of 7 medals in the Olympics, which was an all-time high for India. While that may seem like a very small number for a country with 1 billion and more people, the reality is that this has been possible only due to a shift in mindset and has therefore become extremely important cause for celebration. In those 7 medals lie a story of an India that is removing barriers to growth, becoming more industrialized, and providing more infrastructure, opportunities, and optimism in every field. This is a story that can motivate millions. If Mangal Pandey, the revolutionary, had not started the Indian War of Independence in 1857, and if Subhash Chandra Bose and hundreds of other leaders had not emerged on the scene, India's independence would not have been possible. In Ambedkar's words, India owes her freedom to Subhash Chandra Bose. By the way, a very little known fact, Thailand had a very big role to play in the formation, the training and funding of the Indian National Army, the INA. Many people in India are not aware of this. Great Indian rulers like Porus, Krishna Deva Raya, Shivaji, Rana Pratap, Prithviraj Chauhan, Rani Channamma, Rani Abbakka, Rani Lakshmi Bai, and 100 others are representative of the Indian spirit that fought against invaders and colonizers. Many of them built these grand empires. Unifying a diverse land like India that had 560 principalities at the time of independence into one nation was accomplished by Sardar Patel. It was a time of chaos, yet he accomplished it superbly. This story can definitely be of interest to conflict-ridden places in the world, wanting similar integration, similar peace, much like India. There lies another story. India is the largest democracy in the world, and in fact, the oldest. When the constitution was framed, the drafting committee led by Dr. Ambedkar ensured that strong democratic ideals and social justice were the foundation of the constitution. That elections take place so smoothly, and whenever there is transition of power after elections, which happens every 5 years regularly in our country, it is done so peacefully, a testimony to the robust democracy that we live in, something that other countries can aspire to become. These are just some of the stories that are waiting to be told. We owe our success as a civilization to the risk takers, the seafarers, the traders, scientists, mathematicians, astronomers, philosophers. We owe our freedom to several heroes who instilled the spirit to fight. Therefore, India cannot be reduced to 1 or 2 icons or 1 or 2 stereotypes or 1 or 2 stories. Indian cinema has a huge opportunity in the 75th year of Indian independence to pay rich tribute to this India that has been neglected and unsung to a large extent. Cinema as a medium must use its power to convey this positive and powerful stories of India to the world. Indian cinema, coming to Thailand especially, it has influenced a lot of cultures, I believe, and coming to Thailand, it has influenced Thai culture very significantly in the 1960s and 70s. But it declined later due to the changing tastes of the younger audiences, Thai audiences who prefer Hollywood, even today, Hollywood, Japanese or Korean cinema and culture. But at the same time, Hindi television serials are very popular among the masses, especially among the older generation and homemakers. Thailand and India have very similar plots and sentiments in their soap operas, which is a result of a shared culture. In the past, Indian culture and civilization have influenced large parts of the world, especially Southeast Asia. Indian culture mainly spread through seafaring traders. In Thailand and Southeast Asia, Indian culture also spread through Buddhist missionaries who came from India and the Cholan Empire. Moreover, there has been a migration of people from India over the centuries to Swarna Bhumi. Thailand has been influenced by Hinduism and Buddhism. These influences can be seen in the Thai language, their script, iconography, their names, and culture in general. Hindu gods such as Brahma, Vishnu, and Indra, they are worshipped by many Buddhists here. Ganesha is a very popular god in Thailand. Garuda, the vehicle of Vishnu, is a national emblem. Thai art and architecture found in Buddhist temples have been influenced by Hindu temple architecture. As many would know, the ancient city of Ayutthaya in Thailand is named after Ayodhya in India. There's another city called Surat Thani, which is named after Surat in Gujarat. And the Mekong River is actually Ma Ganga. So in fact, Bangkok has a much longer name, and part of the name is Ayutthaya. I don't think many people know about this. The king of Thailand, as everybody knows, assumes the title of Rama. Royal ceremonies have many Buddhist and Hindu rituals. The royal Hindu Brahmin priests perform those key rituals. The Thai language is influenced by Pali and Sanskrit. Ramayana, the grand epic of India, is very popular as Ramakien in Thailand and has a huge influence over Thailand's art and culture. Buddhism is the predominant religion in Thailand. Buddhism was brought to Thailand by King Ashoka's missionaries in the 3rd century BC. Many ceremonies that are important to Thai culture, such as marriage, ordination, merit making, and festivals, are adopted from Indian traditions. As you can see, Indian culture and influences have merged into Thai culture very seamlessly. It is due to this that Indian cinema and television have been popular here. The Ramayana series in India was a turning point in India's entertainment industry, and it had a massive cultural impact on the country. Indian epics became popular among youth. Last year, when Ramayana was re-telecast after almost 35 years, it was as popular as it was the first time. Ramayana, Mahabharata, Chanakya, etc. have been very popular series outside India as well. In Thailand, recent TV series based on a historical fantasy took the country's imagination by storm. The plot was located in Ayutthaya, the ancient city. After the series started, large crowds of Thai people started turning up to see the temples and ancient ruins that appear in the series. Many of these visitors would dress in their traditional Thai attire, inspired by the characters. So content-based stories of our civilization, as you would observe, the content that involves our traditional arts and heritage have proved to be very popular among people, not just in India, but also outside. I believe this is because they awaken the core civilizational values inside us. If a war movie can evoke feelings of empathy, it is only natural that stories of civilizational resilience and grandeur can evoke feelings of pride, self-respect, and optimism, and motivate a generation of people to work on nation building and success of the nation. If cinema is to portray real Indian stories, it would not be an honest portrayal if it is influenced by foreign cinema, because the social, political, economic context and aspirations of the people in those countries, are much different from ours. To represent India better, cinema must have locally relevant themes and themes relatable to the neighborhood with which we share our culture. It is not to say that such cinema is not made, but it has not reached an audience outside India. And therefore, the audience outside India knows only the stereotyped India. In a nutshell, cinema must become an influencer and an agent for social change by portraying India's rich cultural heritage, by celebrating our heroes, her achievements, strength, and resolve with stories of not just the recent past, but also the distant past. Cinema should educate, empower, motivate, and importantly, connect people to their rich roots. At the same time, there must be collaborations, of course, with film industries outside India, especially those with which there is a robust cultural connect. Collaborations can make the best use of strengths and fulfill the larger goal of bringing two peoples closer culturally. For example, Thailand has exotic locales. A cultural connection with India exists, as I already spoke, and a ready audience for civilizational stories exists. India is a leader in cinema. It has creative and technical talent, cinematic expertise, numerous heritage sites, and beautiful locales. A collaboration could be mutually beneficial economically and culturally, and it would rekindle memories of our common cultural connections. It has the potential to open up a market for new cultural products. The old economic models of governments and a pacifism that was prevalent a few decades ago gave birth to a specific set of ideas which old cinema reflected very powerfully. New economic models of government and competitive world demand a new set of ideas, and the emergence of a new cinema that can go hand in hand with the dreams and aspirations of a billion people. I believe cinema, as a powerful medium of communication, has a large role to play in nation building and keeping alive civilizational memories. This is my submission. Once again, thank you for the opportunity to present my thoughts. I wish the Namaste Global Utsava a grand success. Namaste.
Thank you so much, Aparnaji, for your wonderful insights. I for sure learned something new today. And thank you for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you at this year's Namaste as well. So I would now like to introduce Sri Danji Thotapalli. Danji is the Chief Curator at Indica Pictures and is a senior global technology sourcing professional with a passion for cinema. Having spent the past 10 years at major Hollywood studios, previously at NBC Universal and currently at Sony Pictures, Danji understands the power of film and the extent of its reach. In addition to working in Hollywood, Danji has been associated with the Indian Film Festival of Los Angeles for about 12 years and comes with a deep insight to all facets of running a film festival, such as community outreach, sponsorship or funding, event management, programming, and media relations. Welcome, Danji, and with that, I'll hand over the session to you.
Thanks, Varsha. Hello, everybody. Purnaji, thank you so much. A wonderful speech, very, very illuminating. I'm very passionately interested in the Indian influence in the Southeast Asian countries. So I'll call you one of these days and try to get some more information and enrich myself.
We'll be very
Thank
happy.
you very much. Thank you. Appreciate it. So today we have a great panel. And Vijayalakshmi Akka, would you like to introduce the panel, or do you want me to do that?
You can do that, Danji. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we have I think we already, I'm just trying to see if we have everybody on the dialed in. Yes, we do, except one person who, one of our panelists is having a challenge today. Something came up, some unforeseen circumstances. So Christian Frost is unable to join at this point. He's going to try, he's trying, and if he's able to join, then he will, but if not, then we will have this panel discussion with Mr. Bharat Balaji as well as Mr. Prachand Praveerji. And Aparnaji, you're going to stay on, I presume, and please feel free to, mention if you want to say something. Absolutely welcome to participate. So we thanks Varsha for the introduction. I'll also say that just to give a little bit of a plug for Indica Pictures. Indica Pictures is part of Indica Academy, focused on visual arts. So we have something called an Indic Film Utsav every year. The next one is coming up in November. And we have something called Indica Culture Photography Grant ongoing. We actually received about 93 proposals for grants. And our jury board is reviewing it as we speak. And in a couple of weeks, we will be announcing the grantees, and they'll go off and shoot some wonderful portfolios on Indic civilizational subjects. So that's a brief plug. With that, I'd like to jump into our panel today. Hi, Bharat, Bala, how are you? So I'm so excited, by the way, because I met Bharat Bala way back in 2005 in Los Angeles when he was here to premiere his film Hariom at that time. And I met him very briefly at the ArcLight Cinema in Hollywood. And I was thrilled because years before that, when India was celebrating its 50th Independence Day, there were a couple of things that happened, right? I mean, A.R. Rahman's Vande Mataram, it was an event going on in Delhi and everybody was watching Doordarshan, and suddenly this young man comes up and he starts singing Vande Mataram, and nobody really paid attention for the first 5 minutes or 2 minutes. Then everybody was grabbed, by their collars, and then we all watched it in such awe. So it was an unforgettable moment. And then, of course, Bharat Bala takes that and turns it into a fantastic visual feast. And the image that still makes my, get goosebumps is the image where there are these young men who are carrying this huge flag, Indian flag. I don't think it was ever conceived in Indian visual, in cinema before that, ever. And Bharat Bala, I think that's an image that stayed with me. And I'm so excited to be able to talk to you today. Thank you. Prachand Praveerji, namaste. So I was introduced to your book a few months ago, actually, through an email that, in the Google groups, we have an email for Indic Academy. And I got to, read about your book. Then I went on to Google and researched some more. And I was amazed at how well researched the book is. I expected you to have a lot of gray hair, sir. You're pretty young and you've accomplished a lot, I have to say. So amazing book. And, I would request you to take the next X number of minutes and walk us through the book and, educate us about how rasa, the Navarasas, actually have been part and parcel of Indian cinema from the very beginning. You have to unmute, Sergi.
Am I audible now?
Yes, you are. Absolutely.
Thank you, sir. So first of all, very thanks to Indic Academy and those people for Soft Power for giving me this opportunity to speak about cinema. My talk isn't has little to do with Indian cinema, but cinema in general, as per se. Now, before we begin, we must understand or discuss that what filmmakers they think about cinema. Jean-Luc Godard, great French filmmaker, director, he said, look, cinema shouldn't be called art. It is something very different from painting and literature. And it is something which takes from life and gives back to life. Similarly, Bresson has a very difficulty to accept a lot of movies or film as cinema. He said a lot of films, what you call typically films, are film version of play. And cinema is something much more. And yet we see a distinct style of director or making movies in the work of great directors. By watching few clips, you can easily recognize it's the work of Yasujiro Ozu because of his famous tatami shot, because the cameraman will lie down on the floor and will take the low angle shot, and moreover the camera will remain stationary. Same goes with Kurosawa, heavily edited, and Bresson, where he actually used a lot of physical movements of your limbs, body, and showing your fingers, how you're sweating. And those are involuntary physiopsychological activities. And right from starting from the Griffith and say even in the age of say post Charlie Chaplin, the Fritz Lang, how he invented new things for cinema, like say film noir, going back to this entire history of cinema and looking back to the all kind of diverse movies. What do we think of cinema in general? What do we have to call it, an art or business or medium for social change, or what is it? Can there be a unifying idea which can actually deal with all kind of these divergent thoughts that we have? I believe we have a ready-made answer which actually we forgot, that cinema is nothing but natya. Now, the natya is something different from a natak, that is called play, but the subject matter of the natak, that's called natya. Now, how it is? Now, if you, I would rather like to refer to the Indian classical dramaturgy text, Natya Shastra, written somewhere around 500 BC and being compiled over various centuries, or maybe what we see, the stable version is something constantly given to us since 200 AD. Now, this text is actually a practical guide for, say, poets and actors, that how you have to perform a play. Now, the very first chapter, Indra goes to Brahma and they say that I want a playful medium which can be heard and the seen at the both same time. So audio visual medium, but with a playful object. He said the word is called Kridaniyak. He said, look, this is now the whole idea is if you read a lot of Indian classical texts, they all talk about it has come down from Brahma or Shiva or Vishnu or something. It has been revealed to us. But now the all kind of revelation that we have is kind of different revelation that we see in the Semitic traditions or different cultures, which has a Abrahamic religions and all. But then all this revelation has to do that we have seen and we have to talk about. Now coming back to the focus of this idea of cinema and as a natya. While I will talking, I'll just request Kotiji to share some slides while I just to reinforce my ideas and thoughts.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
Kotiji.
Yeah. Yeah. So go to the next slide, please. Yes. So the what idea of cinema that we have that cinema is nothing but what we must say that what we see the pleasure and displeasure in this world, that world around us, and using gestures, songs, dialogues, words. These are all basically called natya. But what happens with over the period of time? Now we have a very classical definition of what is called art, and there are 64 kind of arts which listed in Dandy's book, and very little has been added to mankind apart from cinema. I think this he differentiated sculpture and fine arts and playing games and as an art and many other things. So but then the whole idea that cinema itself is an art, I'll just talk about it, and not only also talk about, but also show that how the entire cinematic pieces and masterpieces and how many things which are complicated just fit as it has been pre-designed in this whole intellectual schema. For example, we all know that Piero Pasolini's movies 120 Days of Sodom. It's a banned movie in many countries. Still, it's not being seen. And that movie doesn't have to do, with it doesn't. It is not made with the idea that you have kind of some sexual pleasure or some disgusting scene. There is not you for the this normal kind of romantic pleasing. This idea of pleasing is not there, but it's such a powerful movie. So what is it that actually makes movie? What is the idea of this director or say poet who just wanted to convey something? And so coming back to this we have to understand this by etymology. This the root of the word is called nat is called nut, and it has three levels. One is a nritta, which has a normal dance movement. It doesn't have a meaning. When we see a lot of Bollywood songs where the people are dancing, there's some certain kind of simple harmony motion going around, but they do not have that meaning. That's called nrit. But this was also fairly accepted notion in India always, that in some good equation people come and dance. And but then the nritya is something bit cultivated, like in Kathakali and Bharatanatyam, where you actually trying to communicate certain meaning. But when it comes to Nat, it's very important that it has something a distinguished feature that is called a rasa. And the rasa is this what makes natya. And now we'll focus into what is it, the rasa, what is being talked about. And since it is not very described well by Bharatmuni in the Natya Shastra, we resort to a lot of commentators. And one of the great commentators was Abhinav Gupta in 10th century, Kashmir Shahi's philosopher. He mentioned a lot of tradition before him, and he also added the original there were 8 rasa, and Abhinav Gupta added the 9th rasa, and post that is Navrasa word is what we hear, and a lot of other traditions of rasa interpretation. And what is more interesting is the commentary of Natya called Abhinava Bharati. It was lost, and it was rediscovered in 1910s, and that too in southern part of India, Kerala. And in the Kerala, when people actually, then the modern thinkers, they started reading, analyzing, and then our understanding of Natya has become much better. Can you go to next slide, please? Yeah. So let us discuss to the more abstract concept of rasa. And the simple word rasa is something what can be tasted, what can be realized is called rasa, because in the idea could be, it could be a juice, it could be certain kind of taste in literal meaning. It sometimes mean it's medicine, sometimes it is used as a even as a poison. So there are some technical words which I won't go into much detail, but just wanted to have a kind of early introduction so that I am able to better equipped to tell more about what I has to say. So bhava is a word which talks about mental disposition. So now every person has some reflective consciousness, and this consciousness is often filled with some or other ideas, but some ideas are powerful and some ideas are less powerful. For example, anger, for example, the idea of laughter, or for example, the idea of fear. It dominates, and we see that something come and something goes, but we always, some or other times, we are occupied with certain ideas. So the whole idea is not all mental disposition are capable to give rise to rasa, but some very powerful idea which actually arrest you, that gives you the idea of rasa. For example, that a dry wood catches a fire, it's entirely burns, not like, it doesn't happen with wood which is wet. So that was the simile. Let's go to the next slide, please. Yeah. So these are we all know that there are 8 kind of sthayi dominant verbs, and there are 33 kind of transitory emotion, and there's certain temperamental, or say physio-psychological emotions, physio-mental in nature. These are the typical kind of disposition listed in Natya Shastra. We may end up adding more into Vyabhichari Bhav or anything, but I think for the uses of Natya, performance of drama or making of cinema, this is something very exhaustive list, and it does do a lot of justice. Now, very interestingly, this Natya Shastra only deals with the idea of rasa formulation. Now, before this rasa formulation idea is very interesting, because it is not in the sense of say cause and effect, or say knower and knowing. So it is not like a common knowledge. I didn't know Danji, and I'm seeing him for the first time, and I'm seeing his face, and I recognizing that now he wearing a specs. This kind of idea is something's happening in my mundane, or say my routine world, normal kind of reality. So so that, or where the certain things happen with this, some cause and effect. For example, you apply a force and body moves. This is the clear idea of cause and effect. So for example, when I see a face and I make a certain judgment how it is, so this idea that something is remain early, even written, and remain the same even after this my cognition has been done. But then there's something different happens when the aesthetics, or when we watch a cinema, or when we watch a play, or when we encounter a man-made work of art. So it says that there are certain things which works as a determinants, there are certain things as a consequence, and there are certain ancillaries, and when they all come together, and that gives rise to formulation of rasa. This is in a nutshell, but this is very important. They're important because the medium demands different kind of determinants and consequence. And for example, if you remember seeing Pathir Panchali's, the Apu trilogy, and then Aparajita, the very early scene of Aparajita, when Apu's father dies, at the same time on the big dome, all pigeons flies with the same the moment the death happens. So you will see into many great works of art that something important happens, that suddenly certain thing will shown just happening together. What while just talking about, for example, if we all remember Battleship Potemkin and the famous Odessa steps, that there the revolutionaries going up, and the force is coming down, and the people was trying to kill, and some cradle is coming down the stairs, and the very interesting kind of juxtaposition of image was very talked about. I'll discuss in further that how this has to do with this idea of determinants and consequence and transitory state. Next slide, please. I talked about that there's a 8 kind of rasa, and there's a corresponding sthai bhav, which actually leads to that kind of rasa realizations. Let's go to the next slide. Yeah, this is what interesting, because this Abhinav Gupta expositions, this enables us not only to understand aesthetic concept, but also prepare us for the all kind of critical judgment also make us a better aesthete, and also gives a kind of philosophical dimension to many other things. So now I'll spend some considerable amount of time to convey what it means, and we'll then move on. So rasa is tested when a powerful mental disposition is suggested in a drama or in, say, performance. If we have a problem and call cinema as a drama, let's call it in a performance. So when it is suggested in a performance, how it is suggested with a uh, in certain situation, in certain, not in the entire play, but in some part of play, in certain places, that there is a combination of determinant, consequence, and transitory state. And they take some there's a responsive dramatic personage where it resides. Sometimes it can be hero, some it may not happen in hasya rasa, but it happens in, say, for the Shingar rasa, that there has to be a hero, there has to be heroine. But for example, vibhats and hasya, this responsive dramatic personage is not really required, but it is a very important factor, so I put it here. Then what is it? Then it is being perceived by a spectator without any obstacle through an active inference, which leads to what, how this active inference happen is there are certain components which is like identification. The person actually immersed into the perception, what is going around, how, why, and he certainly forgets everything around him, only focused on what is being talked about or being shown. And then there's a universalization of emotion. Now, very interestingly, that we haven't seen the people with bows and arrows, but the moment Rama comes into the stage, we all acknowledge him as Rama. So that kind of idea, there is a universalization of emotion which happens, that it actually affects a lot of people at the same time. And to whom, to who have having a similar heart of a poet, what the, it means that the intended idea of what the creation of the poet is being understood or being felt in a similar way by the spectator. And what happens then, there the emotions that favor out through intrinsic ability. So now this spectator should have certain ability that favors out this emotion for this in the responsive dramatic personage, and this meaning is directly communicated to the heart. And this meaning is when directly communicated to heart. So what happens then, then the person of having his or her own conscious, they release the rasa, and what is it happens, that they have a newer comprehension. Now this comprehension is different from the normal daily activities, and but then it happens, and we all have seen cinema, and we all have this joyous moment that we feel that there's something great has happened to me, like you see, as if you have heard a music of Mozart, and that's some kind of feeling happen when you see Desica's movie and Fellini's Last Strada, or say Bergman Seven Seal. And then this joyous relation accompanied with some mental repose and inner functional activity, then we feel good, and we have this kind of repose inside. And this is reflected in some of the reflexive actions, such as goosebumps, thrills, joy, and pleasure. And this entire activity, which, because there's an entire activity is called wander chamatkar, which is something like there's nothing happen, there is certain movement of images happen in the cinema, and out of those moving images, person actually understands, and this not only determines what's going on, he also have reflective cognition, and this cognition, and this is a different from this kind of logical cognition. This kind of aesthetic appreciations happen, and it also
Praveenji,
suggests something.
I had a quick question.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, what about, there are films where I think Sivaji Ganeshan and Kamal Hassan have played multiple roles, where each role actually represented a certain rasa. Right there, I think I can't recollect the name of the film, but I think Shivaji Ganeshan's film, Rangadurai, I think is the name of the film. So I mean, can you talk about it? And right after that, I think if we can wrap it up, we also kind of running out of time. Thank you.
Oh, sure. Actually, I haven't seen those movies, but I'll just wrap it up, and I'll just quickly go to the maybe what we have to say. I can just talk about see the facets of the rasa itself is a very challenging. Maybe just go to the next slide. I'll just talk about and wrap it up what I had to say. This the idea of rasa is linked to the life pursuits. For example, the very interesting way of looking at the Shringar Rasa is not only that we just see a normal kind of Shringar, that there is a hero and there is when we have separation and union. There's much more. There's the three kind of Shringar. Could be happen Dharma Shringar, Artha Shringar, and Kam Shringar. This has to do with this idea of how you look at the life and what kind of pursuits you have and how it is being understood. For example, Artha Shringar is typically we do not, it's kind of difficult to understand and analyze. Now, this is not what is being understood normally as a Shringar. For example, Knife in the Water of Roman Polanski, or say Vertigo, or say Belle the Zoo of Louis Buñuel. So these movies, these rasa, these kind of rasa or unseen, or for example, Danavi rasa, it's as depicted in Charlie Chaplin City Lights. Now those facets which are of much depth, much depth and they require your attention, is I don't think that's typically people have actually explored. But it is fully explored by other Western genius. I'm sorry, but I haven't seen Kamal Hassan movie or Shivaji Ganeshan movie. But I can tell you example that what we do, the typical mistake is we actually relegate this rasa only to say to dance or certain point of music, but it is much more and much beyond.
Thank you so much, Praveer. That was an amazing, exposition of rasas and how they form the basis, the foundation of cinema or any visual arts or performing arts, so to speak. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you. So with that, we are going to use the second half of our panel today is a chat with Bharat Bala regarding film. And so first of all, who doesn't know Bharat Bala? I don't think there's anyone who doesn't know Bharat Bala. But just for a quick introduction, Bharat Bala is an Indian filmmaker. He's based out of Chennai. He has made many films. He has made short films, several of them. He also has made a full-fledged narrative feature. Right now, there is a project that he's undertaking, which is an enormous project called Virtual Bharat, where he is attempting, and he's already on the journey of making 1,000 short films about India. And several of them are already out there. And I mean, all of them, each and every single one of them have received tremendous response from people. And I myself, I'm always looking forward to the next one. And so Bharat Bala has this amazing skill. And I think more than skill, it's in his blood to make these wonderfully, visually powerful narratives around a certain subject. So I won't get into anything more than that. So Bharat Bala, thank you for joining us today. I wanted to let me actually make it a gallery view so that I can see everybody. So I wanted to talk. I mean, the panel, basically what we want to chat about is how has India been able to influence other countries? So India has, every nation has some amount of soft power. The Japanese have soft power. Their cars, for example, or their designs, they're soft power, right? It's internationally welcomed and accepted, and so every country has soft power. India too has a lot of soft power. One of them is film, and in the space of film, can you talk about how film has or how India has been reflected or captured by filmmakers outside India and incorporated into their stories, into their narratives. Can you unmute? Sorry.
Hi, Danji. Good to see you.
Yes.
And thank you for inviting me. And it was a, thanks to Vijay Lakshmi, she called me. This whole, PST, IST, I thought it's 6:30 in the evening in India. Thank you. I just made it. So I'm happy to be here. Yes, I will talk about it. But just before, there was so much of talk of on Prachand talking about Navarasa. Okay. I recently did a piece. So, it's about emotion, cinematic engagement. So there's a new series in Netflix called Navarasa. And if you had a chance to see it, Mani Ratnam had asked me, hey, can you create the theme of Navarasa for the opening sequence for the entire show? So it was an interesting opportunity because, you wanted to create a theme and should be connected. It's not about generic Navarasa, but it should be connected to the story. So I looked at all those, each of those episodes and then took key artists from each one of them. And interestingly, because they are regular people, because when we talk about Navarasa, we are always seeing imagination immediately is from our classical art, performing art, okay, whether it is a Kathakali or a Bharatanatyam or, So how do we bring this into the cinema space? So I just took this familiar faces of talents and then say, how does one, every emotion has a moment where it switches or transforms from one emotion to the other. Can I find that? Can we go macro on it and capture that emotion and create a opera of emotions? And I asked Rahman to create a piece of music which gives this landscape of emotions and opportunity. And so we filmed in a very interesting way using new technology. But at the heart of it, if you look at it, it's very simple in a visual space, but got everybody's minute detail of how an expression comes out, and that was interesting to work on. So
yes, in fact, Navarasa is on my my watch list. I have to get to it, but now that you're talking about it, I will get to it tonight, right after the show.
okay.
So looking forward to it.
Yeah. So that was my closest engagement with Navarasa in recent times. But I don't look at it very analytically. This whole issue of
I think we're having some technical challenges.
Yeah.
We'll give it a couple of minutes.
hello. Sorry.
No problem.
Hello.
No problem at all. Please continue.
Yeah. So, this whole issue of this whole engagement of soft power, I think one has to look at it more organically and not structurally or analytically. For me, I just first, before going outside of India, uh, India itself in our diversity. It is very difficult to, or we have still not optimized the opportunity of soft power within India. For example, an Assamese film is not seen in Maharashtra, or a Bengali film is not seen in Gujarat. I think there is some great Odisha also make some amazing stories. So we still haven't optimized this idea of using soft power to culturally enrich our diversity, strengthen our diversity, and shared values. Something this is not yet penetrated through cinema even within India. It's either I would say to some extent at a very top level, you can see that today, like say, an OTT platform will put out a movie, and suddenly, in the last, I would say, 1.5 years, you're seeing Malayalam cinema being watched day and date by people somewhere in Chandigarh or somewhere in Bhubaneswar who otherwise would never ever have stepped into that story. Fahd Fasil today, if any movie of Fahd Fasil comes out, the audience outside of Malayalam cinema is keen to watch and know that story.
Yes.
And also, it is the language of cinema which is, especially to some extent, the narrative. Malayalam cinema screenplays have made it palatable and easier to watch or engage with. Otherwise, our narratives are so complicated culturally that it's difficult for somebody outside of that language to absorb and quickly see it. And in the same manner, why are we looking at Iranian films compared to many other films? You know, it's just the how they have taken their cinema. First of all, it's not a marketing machine, soft power. It needs to be, America is a marketing machine. Hollywood is a marketing machine. They will take that cinema and bring it to you and make it up in your face to see, hey, I gotta see it. Soft power is something where you will have to organically find. It's like how a water will find its way through the cracks. So we need to find those cracks and take our stories. And when you have to do that, cinema from Iran, there is so much of humanity in them. So I'm dropping all the cultural nuances, right? Their belief systems are different. Doesn't matter. Suddenly we make strip of all of this and we just are able to connect at a very basic human level. And then I'm loving that story. I'm able to cry with them. I'm able to laugh with them. I saw recently a Tunisian short film made on the Kurdish story. And I was moved. So the honesty in that story suddenly makes it so powerful. So I think just by taking our mythological stories and suddenly saying that the world will watch it, it won't happen.
It won't happen. Correct.
It won't happen.
Yes.
We need to gradually build that relationship with the simple stories.
Yes. In fact, Bala, I wanted to. I mean, it's an extremely powerful, idea that you just mentioned, which is that soft power has to be like water that creeps under the carpet, right? Without anybody's knowledge, it is there. It slowly gets to wherever it needs to get to. So a couple of examples that I wanted to, as a conversational, I just had a thought that came up. For example, this movie called Interstellar, right? Interstellar, Matthew McConaughey's movie, there is this concept of time elapse, right? So I mean, there is a story in our Puranas of a king who takes his daughter to Brahmaloka to get advice from Brahma about a suitor for the daughter. Revati Devi is her name. So, and he spends X number of days there, up going there and coming back, going there, and then Brahma says, "Hey, there's no point going back because, one day in Brahmaloka is like 1,000 years on earth, and the suitor is dead, is gone. So when you go back, the suitor is no more there. So whatever advice you asked for is not relevant anymore." So in the movie, it's the same concept. And if you remember this, the beginning, in the early scene where there is this drone that is flying, and there's a computer that he's trying to control the drone. And if you see, the computer has Hindi or something Devanagari code in it. Right? So the reason I'm saying this, of course, another example is there's plenty of examples. Matrix is a great example of Advaita, influence of Advaita. So Indian philosophical thought has that capability of being like that water that creeps into people's minds, and they use it without their own unconsciously they use the ideas into their own narratives, right? So I just thought I'd share that example, as something that's probably an example for that.
No, I think, can you hear me?
Yes.
Am I audible?
Yes.
That's a phenomenal example, Donji. But like this, there are several films, over a period, even from Close Encounters, if you see, right?
Yes.
How I see it is like when we watch it, we say, "Hey, that's in." Get excited. Whereas Interstellar has it engaged the audience to go to ancient Hindu philosophy or something like that?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. So what is soft power? Creator, that filmmaker of Interstellar was convinced about that. It is an intellect story that is shining over there. And have done it, whether it's Matrix or Avatar, okay. What story yet which either Hollywood has taken and said, "Hey, or this philosophy and make a movie"?
Yeah.
We're still very far away.
Sorry to interrupt, but I think there's your connection is not stable right now. The past several minutes, it's been kind of in and out. So, do you want to disconnect and connect back again, or?
Yeah, I will do that. I'll do that.
I mean, just 30 seconds, back. So Prachand, Praveerji, while Bharat Bala is going to come back, so what's your thinking about this whole soft power and how Indian ideas or Indian films can be so compelling that they become very, very desirable in these overseas markets, because that is what is soft power, right? Like Bharat Bala was talking about Iranian films.
Yeah, I have a different thought about it. First of all, I think that a lot of your ideas are still fixed with the Western notion that the genre or the story or the plot is the soul of the drama or cinema. I distinctly, rightly differ from this Aristotelian or Plato idea. I don't think that should be the case. That's okay. This genre is important, the story is important, but the focus is should be on a very different thing, that the focus should be on rasa, and the rasa is itself is a quite complex concept. Now when the idea is coming that now we have to sell or we have to make what we always I'll just like to quote a small thing about Kieslowski. The Krzysztof Kieslowski, when he was very small filmmaker and he went to a film festival, and the journalist asked him what you would have been if had you not been a filmmaker. He said, I wouldn't have been anything else. I am a filmmaker because I had to be a filmmaker and I had nothing else I could do. I think that's the idea that there some people strive to become some things, and this the idea of becoming, an idea of being is very important, and I think that's where we need to do some introspection, and that is what the basic disagreement I have. Sorry, but Balaji has come, so over to him.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks, Bala, for joining back. So I have another question, that I'd like you to feed, and this has to do with, I mean, you gave an example of Malayalam films, right? Malayalam films have today become palatable for multicultural audiences across the country. So people are able to enjoy them, right? So something about the storyline is acceptable and it's enjoyable, right? So as an industry, right, whether it's Bollywood, which is predominantly Mumbai based, and there you have the mainstream cinema, and nowadays you have a lot of independent, indie, I wouldn't call it independent, but lower budget films, which are trying to step out of the formulaic, narratives, so to speak. And then, of course, you have other industries. You have Tamil Nadu, you have Telugu, Andhra Pradesh, Hyderabad, Telangana, Kannada, Malayalam, and a whole lot of other languages. So, what do you think? What do you think they should be doing to make their films more acceptable to these international markets? Or should it be like mangoes, right? I mean, you know the story about mangoes, right? So, Indian mangoes, 97% of Indian mangoes that are grown in India are consumed locally. So guys like us don't get a chance to eat those mangoes because a large majority of mangoes get consumed within India. So similarly, films that are made in India are consumed by Indians. And for example, a Chiranjeevi film is a big blockbuster, makes a ton of money, and it's consumed, everybody loves it, and they're all having fun, right? So should we really care about this international market? Should we worry about what they want, what they like, what they don't like? As long as we like it, that's good enough, isn't it so? Can you unmute?
It's actually a challenge, but an opportunity too at this point of time. See, you're clear. You said that there are two kinds of cinema. One is we make mainstream cinemas. They're expensive. They have big lead casts, so they need to be consumed immediately by its local consumption, okay, because it's business. And then there is another cinema, which is very artistically made, very, and the narrative is not the regular script of a mainstream cinema. But those movies go out to international film festivals and get recognition, but gets only distribution, selected distribution, only in those markets. So it's like we are making cinema for outside and we are making cinema for local audiences. There are very few films that have crossed and have penetrated both these markets. But today, there is this whole streaming platforms, right? Which the moment you make and put a story out, even for your local market, let's say there's a Tamil film being made and Netflix or somebody puts it on, it's switched on in 127 countries. So I think filmmakers have to think, not bother about boundaries, have to bother about stories and say, how do I tell that script, that story so well that even if I don't know the language, I'm still able to engage.
Yeah.
See, I have a classic example of my own movie. My first movie, which you saw at Arclight Cinema, one of the most prestigious theaters in LA, won the audience award there.
Yes.
Won 8 audience awards, went to 37 film festivals, but still not released.
Wow.
And not released in India. So, but wherever I showed, in Bangkok, it won an award. In Germany, it won an award. It was the Toronto Film Festival, competition in Tokyo. I think universally, it's just the craft of the filmmaker, like what are you influenced from and how do you formulate your stories and how do you handle the characters is a varying, the approaches are different.
Yeah.
If I had just watched only Tamil cinema growing up, mainstream commercial Tamil cinema, my native language will never be able to move out of that state.
Very true.
But today there is an opportunity. We just have to stick to stories, and find that stories and the language of the screenplay to be in a way where it's palatable for a much wider audience. And that's it.
I think you hit the nail on its head. I mean, especially with the OTT platform, it's a huge disruptor, so to speak, and there are no borders now, right? I mean, you put a film on Netflix, and then it like you said, it's watched in dozens of countries where people can watch it anywhere. So one question that I wanted to bring up to you is, now a lot of the content on these OTT platforms, they seem to be defaulting to English being the main language for the film. And I mean, do you think, obviously it's being done to cater to a wider market, right? Because English is a lot more spoken outside the country, and a larger market can access and understand the film. But is there a trade-off there? Do you feel? Is there a trade-off in terms of using the native language for the story, or using English as a language since it's more accessible?
I totally believe that the films have to be original, because the dialogue delivery, the language, the emotion are all linked.
Yes.
The moment you think English, it's alien to that body. It cannot express that emotion. Imagine making a Malayalam film or a Gujarati film with English dialogue. That is a later version, because for the local audience, it has to be convincing. It can't be foreign to all the audience. It should have a house. It should have one home destination story. So make a Gujarati film in Gujarati. Then you can either dub it or put subtitles. That audience accepts it. The audience that's watching with subtitles or dubbed stories understand and accept it totally.
Very true.
I made a film in Tamil called Marian.
Yeah, yes.
Okay. Now, my producer gave it to somebody in Hindi in the film industry, and they have released it in YouTube. Now they have dubbed the film. I was not supervising the dub. It's totally, not to the original idea. The music has been changed. Okay. But who am I to say? He has created that film for a whole new audience. And can you believe it has 35 million views for the full film? And I look at the comments and say, hey, he knows how to take that film to a newer audience. Because if you take YouTube, there is people in Africa, in Middle East, in Bangladesh, in Nepal, watching Indian movies. For them, it is the story and seeing it in their language and period. So that is a true soft power here. Okay.
That's true. Yeah.
And we shouldn't think soft power is how do we take our stories to the West? Why not Bangladesh?
Yeah.
You know, we need to
Our own
see,
neighborhood. Yeah.
yeah, we have to be popular there. And like Aparna was saying, how many people, young people in Thailand are watching our films? No, they're watching Chinese films. They're watching South Korean, Japanese films. So there is no one, easy answer. I think it's like every creation a filmmaker makes and says, hey, will it work? You have to keep trying. And suddenly one dam will open, one beautiful film will come and it will get embraced.
I mean, Dangal is a great example, right?
Yeah. Take for example that Japanese Rajinikanth film, Muttu, that went to Japan.
Yes.
Immediately they thought, wow, people want to watch Tamil films in Japan. No, not that case.
Yes.
That particular film, the way it was, it hit the psyche of Japanese, their animation or, their fun, their comedy, right? They saw it as comedy.
Yes.
And no other Rajinikanth film has worked after that. But that film is iconic.
Yes. I'd like to, bring up something that a lot of people may not know, which is the film that you wanted to make sometime back, and I'm waiting for it. By the way, Manas Malhotra, who worked for you, good friend of mine, he told me about the story, and I said, "What a story! What a fantastic film!" And it did not get made for, I'm sure, there are good reasons for it. But do you have anything on those lines that you have on your anvil that in terms of you're trying to put together and create that we can look forward to?
Let me go back on that project. Okay, the film was called 19 Step. So when my first film, Hari Om, was in competition in Tokyo, and that was my first visit to Japan. And my first 10 days, I was fascinated by that country. And the audience asked me consecutively, what is your next story? Do you have a story with Japan? That made me thinking. And then fascinated by seeing all the samurai stories, okay, I imagine how about a samurai meets a Kalaripayattu guru or the guru of original martial arts, and what is the conversation between them. And so we made a story which is very believable, and that is a kind of a story for soft power.
Absolutely.
Because it was originally written. It was two cultures which were naturally coming together. And there was a story. There was a story. How did Zen Buddhism evolve? What was the journey? Somewhere it all got traced within that story. Yeah. And the idea of Buddha, everything came together within a conversation between a master and a guru Shishya. So it was a perfect story to be in that respect of soft power. Yes. Now, having said that, you're asking me, what am I doing? Yes, I'm excited. I'm working on an important hero from our history, right? A great hero. But that hero has not been, we know him as an image, but I don't think the outside world knows anything about it. The person's personality and his ideology is so relevant today and will be relevant tomorrow. So when I'm approaching that script, I'm saying, hey, let's not keep thinking and just celebrating the past. We'll write the scenes. Yes, it is from what happened at that time, but how it is a conversation for today.
Yeah.
And so in that sense, I'm hoping that project will resonate with certain voices which are fighting for a common cause around the world. It will resonate. And then you will see a great thinker, a great mind from this soil, how he had thought so many years ago and was able and was like a wall to fight. So in that sense, is here again, it's an opportunity. It's a mindset, sir. The filmmaker should have the mindset. I want to tell the story to anybody.
Yes. Yes.
I want to tell a story.
It's a mindset.
And also, if a child watches it or a grandfather watches it, a person who don't, I'm going to tell you something interesting. Many years ago, the head of Tihar jail, the inspector general of Tihar jail, invited me to say, why don't you curate a film club for all the inmates, the prisoners? So I said, I'll curate only foreign language films. Obviously, in those days, I didn't have a job opportunity. I had to pirate all the DVDs, okay? But I made a curated list. And they will not know the language, but they're going to come and watch these amazing stories. Because somewhere they will find a connect. And guess, so I was invited, we set up a screening room, a projection for about 50 people to sit and watch every day a movie. Guess what was my first film that I screened over there inside Tihar jail?
That's it.
Any guess?
And you said they are foreign languages.
Foreign language, yeah.
Foreign language, okay. Sorry, I don't.
Bicycle Thief.
Oh wow!
I watched the reaction. They are watching an Italian film. It's got English subtitles, and some log are from, they don't even know how to read and write, but they were glued to it. They could feel the story.
Yeah.
So absolutely. I could observe that it worked over there,
Yes. I think that's a great example, So I think we are kind of about 7 minutes, but I have a couple more questions for you, and then let me see if there's anything. There are several questions on the Q&A side. So let me take a couple of those, and then if I have time, I'll go with mine. But otherwise, I think there are a whole bunch of questions here. So I'd like to okay, they're actually, most of them are comments. They're not very question-like. Mostly they're commenting about stuff.
Ranji, I am no authority on cinema. Okay, I am just sharing my experiences. Okay, I am also in this journey. I'm also in a discovery. I also, I live between LA and here. Why? Just because I want to be part of that world. I want to tell the story to a wider world. Yes. So I'm constantly struggling and finding,
Yeah. I mean, I'm part of the studio system. Even though I'm not directly on the production side, but I interact because I'm very passionate about it. So I get every chance I get. I have ghostwritten. I've been part of focus groups trying to look at pitching. I was sitting in pitching sessions and things like that. So I mean, the thing is, what I noticed is that, for example, in Moulin Rouge, when there is that Chama Chama scene, a lot of people in India felt, wow, we made it. In Moulin Rouge, we have a Bollywood song, but they don't care, right? It's just one thing that they put in there for novelty's sake. And that's it, right? I mean, I think I think we have to be a little bit more substantial in what we are trying to do, as against get excited with these small things that happen accidentally most of the time. So from that point of view, I wanted to ask you, now you have seen
Danji, can I just say something to you?
Sure.
You mentioned
Go ahead,
about
please.
Moulin Rouge. Okay.
Yes, please, absolutely, yes.
Like, I think one of the greatest in modern times, the stories that from India that has been told to the world is Gandhi.
Yes,
Sir Richard Attenborough did it.
yes,
I think we need to find subject matters and get international filmmakers to come and do it.
yes.
That's an easier, quicker vehicle to take it to the world.
I agree.
I'm not saying we don't have, it's not a question about why not we don't have, don't we have competent filmmakers? Yes. But I think that immediately the thought process of how that film, he will look at it as a universal subject and take it how it will work. So some ideas can be done which will help to take that, instantly make it into a mainstream story.
I totally agree with you. In fact, I would say, I'm so convinced about that. Because, see, unlike French cinema or Japanese cinema or American cinema, they have the art of filmmaking is a science, right? The genres are very fixed. You make a certain film in a certain way. You don't mix stuff. So, and an Indian cinema is difficult. They don't know what to say about it, because it's an animal they can't identify, right? Because it's a mixture of a wide variety of genres in the same film. But like you said, I think when we bring in a filmmaker who's able to make a film from her or his point of view, and bring in that discipline or that skill, I think it's definitely going to be compelling. There's no doubt about it, And Gandhi is a great film, and it's an AFI top 100. It's in the AFI top 100, which means, and I watch it every October 2nd. Every October 2nd, I watch the film because it's an amazing film. So yeah, so I think we're out of time. We're just about 2 minutes left, and what I'll do is I'd like to ask Vijayalakshmi Akka to come back. And
one last reference I will give you.
Sure.
There's a film called Great Debate.
Great Debate.
Denzel Washington directed that film. Okay. Have you seen it?
Nope.
It's a must-watch film.
Okay.
Again, it's about the African American oppression against, the white oppression on them, and it is that struggle. And finally, a black student gets an opportunity in a white college in a debate.
In debate, okay. I'm going
and
to
in
watch
the key debate, the opening line of the debate, imagine it's set in America, maybe in the 60s, okay, or 50s. The opening conversation and the debate starts with Jallianwala Bagh.
Amazing.
So how they have taken and a very barbaric thing that happened in history in a distant land that's not connected it to them, and made it a main part of the debate was phenomenal.
Yes, I agree. Oh, that's a fantastic. It's goosebumps.
Yeah.
Right away.
I just remembered it. For me, and I just looked at it saying, how did Denzel Washington pick that up? There are so many other things he could have talked about slavery, but
Yes.
he brought that, and he brought about the whole idea of ahimsa as satyagraha. Okay.
Satyagraha, yes.
And lastly, hold on. I just want to say one more thing. I saw the play Satyagraha in Los Angeles. Imagine it is a musical. The entire musical is in Sanskrit by and every actor is an American or an African American. And it's a 3.5-hour show in Sanskrit.
Sanskrit.
And there was a spellbound audience of 1,000 people in the theater in LA Opera Theatre.
Yeah.
So I'm sure they're doing it. We have to figure out how we have to celebrate.
I know, absolutely.
Okay,
I totally agree. That was a wonderful interview, Bharat Bala. I am so thrilled to have spent 45 minutes with you talking about one-on-one about film. I look forward to meeting you when you're in Los Angeles the next time.
We'll catch up next month.
We'll catch up and then, wonderful. I look forward to that. And thank you very much. And over to you, Vijayalakshmi Akka.
I'll take over from Akka.
Sure.
Thank you so much, Balaji. It's a fascinating conversation. Every time I'm listening, there's at least a movie list that I'm writing down simultaneously, but also perspective to actually look at cinema. And similarly, Prachandji, for bringing a different perspective of looking at it from a rasa point of view, especially the last side, when you're talking about the Purusharthas. As an international relations person, I've looked at it only from what Kautilya says, but looking at Purusharthas from the rasa theory or a point of view is very interesting. And I think that conversation continues today evening as well, when we have a whole discussion around universal aesthetics, Indian aesthetics actually on the global stage. So I request all of you to also be a part of that if you could join us. Thank you so much, Tanji, from water to mangoes to so many other things. It was a wonderful segue, such an interesting conversation. I'd like to thank our audience again for joining us. And with that, we'd like to close the session. Thank you so much to all the panelists for joining us for this session.
Thank you. Thank you, Tanji.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Bala. Thank you, Prachand, Pravichi. Thank you, Aparnaji. Thank you, everybody. Bye.